Welcome to the Administration and Public Works Committee of Tuesday, April 10th, 2012. We have a quorum. May I ask for approval of minutes of the regular meeting of March 26, 2012?
I move approval of those minutes. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Items for consideration: City of Evanston payroll through March 25th, 2012. $2,467,405.58.
Move approval. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. A2, City of Evanston bills through April 11th, 2012, in the amount of $3,953,332.17, and City of Evanston credit cards through February 29th, 2012, of $113,427.29.
I move approval.
Second.
Alderman Rainey?
Yes. Madam Chairman, I'd like to have some information from staff regarding the question I asked about Evanston Community Development Corporation receiving the check from CD for the security. The answer here is, it's because it was so long ago, the building still hadn't been turned over to the condo association. I think it was 2008. So the organization paid the bill, and so of course we paid them back. That was the answer. What I want to know is, why are we paying a bill that was incurred in 2008 this year? Did something get lost, or did the organization simply not submit it? But I don't need it now.
Ms. Flex, could come to the mic? Thank you.
Chair Burris and members of the committee, Sarah Flax, Housing and Grants Administrator. I can't explain. The work was actually done much more recently. The project was started. It was evaluated. Our police officers went and looked and did the survey back in 2008. The actual work was done in September, completed in September 2011. So the whole process has taken forever. But ECDA did paid the bill, and so they were reimbursed.
So that makes sense.
Sorry if the explanation was incomplete.
The reason it took so long to get the job done, because I'd definitely like to know who that security installer is so that I don't make the mistake of calling them.
I don't think it was the installer. I think it was just a long process. It
can't be. Can't take 3 years to install it. It's a 6 flat.
No, it's not the work that takes it. It's once they do the initial goal when they actually start the job.
Okay, I'm sure there is a bad explanation, but an explanation. I think we need to look at the program and make certain that it doesn't take 3 years ever again for an installation to take place. At least not one that we're assisting with the financing.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions on the bills list? Nope. All those in favor? Aye. A3.1, approval of staff recommends approval of the single source purchase of VoIP surveillance monitoring cameras, installation and configuration for the Levy Senior Center to current technologies in the total amount of $23,898.05. Funding will be provided by the Capital Improvement Program.
Second.
All those in favor? Alderman Rainey.
Past weekend, rock got thrown through one of the giant windows at the Levy Center, and the first question I asked is, what did the video show? And I was told that the video had not worked since July. I'm sure there's another explanation for this, but when you have a resource like the Levy Center that has so many people around it all the time, some of them a little more fragile than others, some of them young children. It's an asset that costs millions and millions of dollars. Everybody knows that one of those windows, huge. I don't want it now because it's going to take way too long, and I don't want to get into a debate about it. But why did we wait since July to install operating security system there? Or maybe we used the same people that Sarah was dealing with. I don't know.
Okay. Mr. Gaynor, for our next meeting, could you explain why?
Okay,
Okay,
I'd like to,
Mr. Gaynor, then please come forward.
Doug Gaynor, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services, members of the committee, and Chairperson Burris. The system, first of all, never had an outside camera. This was only an internal system. And it started to fail in August. It didn't fail completely, but it started to fail in August. We thought we could make repairs. We were working with our IT department. It was finally determined later in December we needed to make a replacement, and that was after we brought a consultant in. So we then prepared the specifications, working with IT, and we're bringing it forward now. It was not something was in the capital plan, so we had to work with our finance folks to make sure that we could even afford to do it. The project is said in the report, it's a $23,000 project. The window that was broken out on Friday evening, we just got a quote, is to be replaced between $400 and $800, and hopefully it would be done before the end of the week.
Alderman Rainey?
I find that not very satisfactory. I think in September, let's say it happened in July, I think late August, beginning of September, we should have assumed that we weren't going to get it working after we tried. It's an emergency purchase. And even if it is only inside, the rock went inside. So I just think that we need to take a look at all these systems. I know from time to time I find out that one of the security cameras on the street hasn't been working for a month. I think we need to stay more on top of that. That's what I think.
Thank you, Mr. Gaynor. All those in favor? Aye. A3.2, staff recommends that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute the 2012 Green Bay Road landscape maintenance contract with the low bidder, Christie, Weber and Company, in the amount of $25,650.65. Funding is provided in the fiscal year 2012 budget, account number 3510.62195, which has a total allocation of $120,000 for landscape maintenance services.
Okay.
Any questions? Alderman Rainey?
I know it's that time of year, and I'm wondering, for Paul, I think, when the Howard Street contract is going to be presented, or is it a continuation of last year? I think I remember the last few years we've waited a little late, I think.
Good evening, members of the committee, Chairman Burris. Paul D'Agostino, Superintendent of Parks, Forestry, and Facilities Management. The Howard Street streetscape maintenance contract has already been awarded to the same company that did it the past 3 years. It was requoted earlier this year, but it's far less than $20,000, so
Okay.
it won't come to this council.
Could you send me a note on reminding me who that is and how to contact them?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. A3.3, staff recommends that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute a contract for the 2012 MFT street resurfacing program with Chicagoland Paving in the amount of $1,109,900. Funding will be provided from the motor fuel tax funds. The budgeted amount is $1,400,000.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
A3.4, Staff recommends that City Council authorize the city manager to provide $39,850 in financial assistance to Evanston Community Media Center, ECMC, to cover 5 months' rent expenses for the period of January 2012 through May 2012. Funding will be provided by the city manager's contingency fund, account 1525.68250, with a total budget of $258,200 and an amount not to exceed $39,850. In exchange for rental assistance, the city will withhold $39,850 in PEG fee revenues annually allocated to ECMC for city government access purposes.
Move approval. Second.
Alderman Rainey?
Madam Chair, is there anybody signed up to speak from the organization? Because I know we got some emails.
Steve, do you want to, or Joe?
Here to answer questions if you'd like. That's fine.
Steve is here. Can you come up? Thank you.
I don't have a question.
Oh, I thought you.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wondered if they wanted to talk.
Do you want to say anything?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory right now. It's just that we want to complete the move. It's taken a little longer, some of it having to do with the cable signal being taken from our building and moved over to the new site. Comcast, though, is now currently starting progress on that, so we should be able to move ahead. This is a one-time situation, and we think it's a fair deal in the sense that there are equipment monies that are put aside that will be equal to the amount that we're asking for in back rent to keep us open.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
A 3.5, staff recommends City Council approval of the 2012 Fleet Purchasing Plan, which includes the 2012 equipment replacement proposal in the amount of $2.4 million. The 2012 additional equipment replacement proposal in the amount of $1.1 million, and the 2013 equipment specification and bid plan. This item was held in committee on March 19th, 2012. Hi, Mr. Lyons.
I misspoke earlier. It is A35, not A37 for the presentation.
I
But
wrote
if you're
it down at
moving,
A37. So would you like to present now?
depending on whether you wish to move in second first, however
Yes.
the committee would like to proceed.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Lyons, you are up.
Good evening, Chairman Burris, members of the committee, Marty Lyons, Assistant City Manager. At the last meeting, as noted in the introduction, the committee asked for history and a little bit more explanation of what it is we're proposing with the report and with the other vehicle purchases that you see on the agenda this evening. So I'm going to go through this presentation fairly quickly, but would of course take questions during the presentation, after any of the other agenda items as we go through those. So we're just going to go through a state of the fleet, a history of fleet financing, recommendations for the FY12 vehicle replacement, that's also in your packet, and then a look at ongoing planning for the fleet. So this is a repeat of the presentation that we did 3.5 years ago, and it breaks down our vehicles in all the different usages. It's not really necessarily by department, it's by the type of vehicle and how we use them. We're looking at 364 units, 411 units in 2008, so that equates to 47 units retired and not replaced. If anyone has any questions regarding that, later on I have a listing of the actual vehicles by type of the ones that were reduced.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lyons. We have, as you said, significantly reduced our fleet over the last several years, and how much of that is accounted for by our significant reductions in payroll, that is, the number of employees that we have?
A substantial portion of the reductions can be attributed to reductions in payroll, but also the fleet services team and Public Works and all of our departments have worked on sharing of vehicles and also leasing. The engineering department does not, is it 2 or 3 vehicles? 2 vehicles each year now that we would have purchased before. They lease them during the summer months, and during the winter months, they are not out in the parking lot with snow on them. So it's a good use. We've also, again, looked at sharing the dump size vehicles, dump trucks. So a lot of it goes with sharing. A lot of it goes, as you pointed out, we have had some reductions. And then one of the larger areas was when we made our change in solid waste operations and we were able to reduce the amount of packing trucks that we had.
Thank you.
And by the way, if I miss anything, Suzette or Lonnie, I also meant to point out that Suzette Robinson and Lonnie Jeske, our Fleet Services Manager, were instrumental in putting this information together, so thank you very much to them, as well as all of the departments in the review of the fleet plan. So again, one of the things that we wanted to reiterate was when we look at our fleet, it's not just one homogeneous group of vehicles. We have vehicles that last 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and 10 to 20 years. And I'll show a little bit later, for the most part, as our vehicles have longer lives, yes, they also cost a little bit more. They're the larger vehicles that we're more interested in engine runtime than miles on the vehicle. So but they do last substantially longer than, say, our squad cars, where we're more interested in the miles that are put on them, and we change them out between 60 and 75,000 miles, if at all possible. So in looking at our computerized fleet analysis system, we wanted to try and also give a little bit more background. So again, looking at our fleet, useful life, it's composed of vehicles that have costs that reflect useful life. A fire ladder truck costs $1 million, but it lasts 20 years. And we do have to maintain it during that 20-year lifespan, but the longer the life, the larger the vehicle, the higher the expense. We also have the police squads and a few of our even smaller units of equipment that have smaller lifespans. But for the most part, we trade those in and out, and it's this part of the equipment replacement plan that has prompted us to also want to get this out of our capital improvements plan. This is not the same as our capital improvements plan of redoing streets and sidewalks and things of that nature. That's why we now have an equipment replacement fund separate from a capital improvements fund. When we look at, it's actually one of your attachments in the report, Alderman Rainey?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see your light.
Is the capital,
Okay.
is the capital improvement, is the capital expenditure account in fleet funded by chargebacks or something else?
Yes, it's funded by chargebacks. And we do have later on in the presentation some a detailed slide on that. I have a couple of bullet points, but would be happy to go over it with any committee members. The print gets a little small, so but it's a 10-year review. So I think what's really important to note is while we do have vehicles that last 20 years and only 3 to 4, on average, the fleet will turn over in about 9 to 10 years. We have an average useful life of 9 to 10 years. The 9 years being what the American Public Works Association says we should keep them. And our own staff, after having looked at the condition of our vehicles, they feel that we can make them last a little bit longer than 1 year. And that's a lot, really, when you're talking about 360 vehicles, making them all last an extra year on average. Right now, as we'll relate in a few following slides, we have 151 vehicles that are either due or overdue to be replaced. Sounds like a lot, but let me run through the slides a little bit to put it in perspective. Because we're over that 151 mark with the vehicles, what we are proposing is some catch-up. And most of this catch-up in funding is coming from a accumulation of funds from the interfund transfers that Alderman Rainey just referenced. Some of it, the difference between $2.4 million and $3.5 million, we're looking to do with an additional transfer to actually help us catch up even further in our replacement. And I have a slide coming up that will detail that. So by vehicle type, here's what the situation we have. So, and not reading the slide to you, but on the right side, 59%, so just about 60% of the vehicles are not overdue, but 40% are overdue for replacement. If we move forward, our request is 35 to 39 vehicles can be replaced with what we're planning to the funding that we're talking about this evening. So I split the difference and said if we replace 37 vehicles, we would pop up to 69% of the fleet being replaced in a timely basis. So we've made some significant progress just by moving forward with this step this evening. So this is the one economic theory slide. So that time usage asterisk right in the center is our 10 years. We have vehicles that average 10 years in life. So if we're replacing them at that life, we should have our operating costs, the blue line, our capital costs, the green line, at an optimal level where the total cost is at the bottom. You can see my graph is off just a touch, but what's important to note is the vertical line to the right is just an estimate of where we feel the city is at right now. We're keeping our vehicles longer than 10 years, hence we have 151 vehicle backlog for replacements, and it's actually costing us money. Yes, we've spent less money on capital, but we've spent more money on maintenance and operations, and the net effect is an overall increase in costs for less productive vehicles. They're just not in as good a shape, and we're actually spending more money than we could or should. So one of the things that gets very complicated about fleet tracking and capital tracking is that these are assets. So if I get up here and I want to tell you about, here's our independent audit of this situation, it's very difficult because auditors treat vehicles as assets. So when we buy them, we swap cash for vehicles and no expense is recorded. We only record an expense when we do our depreciation expense, when we use the vehicle. So it makes our discussion of what did our auditors say about how we're doing our expenses for fleet, it makes it a little bit more difficult proposition. But in the next few slides, we're going to attack that. The more common way to look at fleet is to look at it from a budgeting and capital planning perspective. So we recognize the expense when we buy the vehicle, and we that way we put aside enough funds to pay for the vehicle going forward, or when we have a $1 million ladder truck that's going to be replaced in 3 years, we want to start putting aside dollars so that we don't put it in a bond issue, which we had a lot of bond issues funding fleet in the mid-90s. When we were doing some research, that's what we came across. So generally accepted accounting principles, that's what GAAP is, and so that discloses to us in our CAFR what the net value of the fleet is, and that's going to be important in the next slide. And budgeting discloses and projects what we need to buy each year. So here's the auditor's view of it. If you look at the far left, basically we had $9.5 million in depreciated fleet and $6.7 million in undepreciated fleet for a total value of $16.2 million. That was what the fleet was worth in 01-02. So now fast forward all the way to 2012, actually 2011. Yes, so actually we have it all the way through. But you look at our fleet now has a value of $5.3 million. That's the net value left and an accumulated depreciation of $15 million. The whole fleet is worth $20 million, but we've used up 15 of it. Just another way of saying we're behind 151 vehicles, another way of looking at it. And this is from the auditor's perspective. So why didn't we plan for this? So here's a 10-year history of our budget planning. For the most part, we tried in 2001 all the way through 2004, we were underfunded in that area. you're just $1 million for $16 million wasn't going to cover an average 10-year replacement cycle. We needed to have more funds in at that point in time, and it showed up in the next 2 years. We increased it almost all the way up to $2 million as we recognized that we needed to get moving on it. In 07, 08, it was the normal budget story of the general fund could not afford to give $1 million $2 million to the fleet, and that's the general fund provides almost 3/4 of the fleet funding. That's where all of our vehicles are. The rest is water, sewer, parking. So again, after 07, 08, we went back to that $2 million level, and this is budget. Please remember, this is not actual. The next slide is actual. All throughout that time frame, that blue line, I think, is very important to note that throughout that timeline, the budget for maintenance reflected what was truly happening. We weren't buying all the vehicles, and we had to keep raising our maintenance budget to cover it. So when we go to the next slide, the blue line is now our actual purchases, and the green line is our maintenance, and you see the maintenance continuing to trend up. It stayed close to budget throughout the whole time frame, but the actual purchases did not track with our budget. And I have a few bullet points that point out, for instance, in more recent years, what happened. In 2008, 2009, we had the salt crisis, where we spent $750,000 on salt, and that came from the general fund, and that was also the first year of the economic recession, where we reduced the amount of transfers to the fleet fund to keep the general fund cash balance above, at an acceptable level to keep operations going. So that was, would we have rather done something different? Yes, but at the same time, we had our pension issue. And in that year, the city decided that we were not going to raise property taxes at all, whether it was pension, debt service, or operations. So no increase for property taxes. We didn't want that at all that year, so we swapped, reduced general fund property taxes, increased pension fund property taxes per the Blue Ribbon. Well, the Blue Ribbon recommendation wasn't to increase property taxes, but their recommendation was to make sure we funded properly. So that caused our dip in actual purchases in 08-09. We raised the budget up again in 9-10, but again, in the case of 9-10 and 10-11, it really had a lot to do with timing. And since we didn't get them purchased in those years, we are saying now that we need to move forward. We have a plan to purchase 35 to 39 vehicles. And I think with the demonstration of reducing the fleet by 47, we continue to work on green initiatives. I wish there were some better green initiatives for our larger vehicles, but they're still not there. I just haven't seen alternative fuel or hybrids for those large vehicles, which would really help us out a lot. So, but this is our actual picture. So where are we at now? 151 vehicles, due or overdue. Combined total, $10.2 million. The recommendation is to take the $2.4 million that's in the budget already and augment that by $1.1 million from the general fund and using further reserves basically coming from unpurchased vehicles in the last 2 years from the fleet fund itself for a total of $3.5 million. If we do that, it equates to a funding deficit now of $6.7 million in overdue vehicles in the replacement of the vehicle. I'm sorry, let me start again. Equates to a funding deficit of $6.7 million. So per that previous slide I had where we go up to about 69% on time, that's another way of saying it. So what can we do? The vehicle backlog is too large to fund from reserves. We cannot transfer enough from the general fund or from other funds to cover our $10 million backlog. The backlog could be funded from general obligation bonds, which was done in the mid-90s, but interest costs on the 10-year bond, because that's our average life. I wouldn't recommend doing a 20-year bond. that would be $1.4 million on $6 million in bonds. That would basically, we would still be short $700,000, but you get the idea from the example. 4%. So that's still a very favorable. If this was at 6 or 7%, the number would be closer to $2 million on interest costs. And per our whole capital improvements planning discussions, we've really been trying to put the clamps on new general obligation debt. So looking at number 3, we think we can, and I've talked with fleet staff regarding this, that we have a plan that the patient will not be killed by the cure. Because one of the things that, while it's very nice for the finance person to stand up here and say, if we level fund over 10 years, we should be okay, but if the vehicles are dying before then, it doesn't work. So the next slide, a little bit tough, so that's why I got the pointer. So if you look at this line right there, that is our backlog line. So we start off at 10 million, and we start dropping quickly because we are going to start purchasing. But what I'm saying is that with this, and you can read it through the tables as well, that as we purchase, the purple line is the amount of backlog. And as we keep on purchasing at a level amount, by 2016, we'll have cut it in half, and by 2021, we are actually in a surplus. And I think what's really important is this line in the purchasing plan. We're saying 3.5 million, 2.5 million, and then 2.1 million that we would purchase. Now, oops, sorry, hit the wrong button. Again, I think what's important to note is that you compare that to the items due for purchase. We still, in some cases, we'll start purchasing more than what is due, but we will still have a backlog. And the question that I asked the fleet manager was, would we be able to survive until 2015 with this kind of a process? And he assured me that, yes, he thinks that we could do that. And what this doesn't include is what would happen if we just right-sized by 10%? What would happen if we were able to reduce the fleet? Maybe it's not the fleet in numbers, but the fleet costs by another 10%. Then that 2.1 million is 1.9 million, and over 10 years, we've saved just under $2 million. And I am going to jump to this slide. Why would I pick this $2 million? Because with our 47 vehicles we did right-size, this is the Fleet Maintenance Division's estimate of our savings for those vehicles. So if we can do it again, we should be able to save it again. It's always tough when we're projecting, but these are actuals of those vehicles gone and what we would have spent in the past 3 years on those vehicles based on their own maintenance schedules. I don't think I've misstated that, have I, Lonnie?
No, that's right on the mark.
Okay. So getting back to the presentation, vehicle justification, we're going to keep looking at the right sizing. So justification by department division, emphasize shared equipment, both within divisions and then down below with other entities. That's an area we haven't explored that much at this point, but we can't share snow vehicles. Everyone needs them at the same time. But there may be other vehicles that we can share. So I think that's one of the things that we will continue to look at. And there's a municipal purchasing initiative that's been focusing on capital to start off with. Perhaps we can move forward with vehicles as their next phase. So I'm probably past my time limit. Our next steps, continue with our planning process, review our assets, and adjust if we have any need to adjust in the life cycles. Continue to explore green solutions, alternative fuels, and I'm sorry, that should say alternative fuels and vehicles. So whether or not we can look at hybrids or other sources, it actually says it below. So higher MPG vehicles and less vehicles in total. As I just referenced, a greener solution is with less vehicles.
Alderman
gonna
Rainey has a
stop right
question.
When you do your right-sizing studying, when you look at passenger vehicles, what is the justification for having passenger vehicles in the fleet?
Right now, our passenger vehicles are for our inspectors, our engineers, and administration, and let's see, who else would I be missing out of that? Excuse me, the police department will have a very large contingent of passenger vehicles, both marked and unmarked, and as well as in the.
Marty, you know I'm not talking about squad cars.
So-
I'm talking about passenger vehicles, the white vehicles with the city seal on them. Does every city have them?
Yes, they do.
And justify it?
Well, I really think, though, that we're going to continue to be a little bit ahead on the municipal curve. Does that mean we're ahead on the corporate curve? No, we're not. But having leased vehicles, I'm not aware of other engineering divisions that are leasing their vehicles. I think we need to continue that process. But the big problem is service. If we want to be able to reach out to that business or resident immediately, the vehicle gets us there immediately. In many cases for engineers, or some of them have tools, so they're also carried. But that's been probably, besides the packing trucks, our biggest reductions have been in the administrative area. We keep on reducing and waiting to hear regarding any service lapses because the employee would say, I can't get a car. And that's just not happening yet. So we still have, I think, some room to go.
But some of the employees that say I can't get a car are employees that have a truck or a car in the parking lot.
That's true.
I want to know, what is the justification for passenger vehicles in a city fleet? And I'm not talking about squad cars.
Okay. Well,
or cars with sirens and lights.
We can come back to the council with a direct analysis of, because there are of communities that have eliminated their vehicles and went to mileage or went to other utilization, that a staff member comes in, they drive their vehicle, and when they go out to do their job, they also drive their vehicle, and they get 50 cents a mile, or there's some kind of a car allowance, whatever the IRS regulation is.
It's like 50 cents a mile is a lot.
Well, they dropped it back from 52, but at one of the things, at 50 cents a mile, it includes the fuel. So there's no filling up of the pumps.
And it should include the insurance and everything else. I think it should. And I'll bet dollars to donuts it's cheaper than buying cars.
I would agree. Have we done an analysis of how much time these passenger vehicles are sitting in the parking lot? I think that's the real missing piece here of maybe at a peak time people say they can't get a vehicle, but what does that look like on the scheduling of how often are they just sitting idle?
We have not done it on an hourly by hourly basis, and that's what I would recommend, is that at several different times during the year, so middle of summer, 4 times a year, to do that analysis of how many times do we have vehicles sitting there, because I joked about it, but we do have the snow test. And the vehicle, if it's sat there for more than 2 days with snow on it, why do we need it?
Right. Any other questions? Director Robinson.
Good evening, Chairman and committee members. Suzette Robinson, Director of Public Works. We do periodically do utilization tests, where we look at not how long the vehicle is idle in the parking lot, but we look at overall usage over a period of time. And we have done that in the past, and we have used that to downsize the number of sedans in particularly the ones in the parking lot out here. So we have actually reduced our numbers in that right sizing process, and we use the data to justify that. And as Marty has indicated, so far As a result of those reductions, we have not seen a situation where we didn't have a vehicle available. And we also have pool cars available, too, to kind of supplement when needed. So, and we can, do more of that and share that data with you of past studies that we've done as well.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate the amount of information here, as well as coming up with alternatives and not going out and borrowing more money and finding ways to do this without putting us in more debt. So I'm thankful to Director Robinson and Bonnie and Mr. Lyons. Alderman Rainey.
Well, I'm very disappointed that you're still recommending that we take $500,000, $500,000 from the general fund reserves. And so for that reason, I'm not going to support this, because I think, well, on the one hand, you're not going out, I don't agree with bonding at this point either, because we have the money, but we're borrowing from the taxpayer to pay the $500,000. That could, what if we have a horrible snow year this year, something, some emergency, some need for extra funds to buy things? We're not going to have it, because we're going to put it in vehicles that I am sure that we should not be doing. So I don't support the plan. I support the purchases on the agenda tonight, but not the plan, since it still includes the $500,000.
And Alderman Rainey, we can also come back, if we move forward with the purchases for 2012, we have the 2013 budget process to relook at where we're at with the additional purchases as well.
Have we gotten, one more thing, have we gotten a report, Ms. Robinson, on snow removal savings this year?
No, but I will be presenting that as a part of the SALT in the next meeting, at the next
Maybe
meeting.
not till May, because we never
well, actually not until December, because we're on a new budget cycle, but I will talk about what the snow season has done, provided that we have a mild December.
Well, that's true. We have another.
Yes. Any other questions? All those in favor of A 3.5? Aye. A 3.6.
Wait, opposed?
Oh, any opposed? I'm sorry.
Aye.
Sorry. A 3.6. Staff recommends City Council approval to purchase 6 replacement dump trucks for various departments in the amount of $749,320 from Prairie Archway International Trucks in the amount of $749,320. Funding will be provided by the Equipment Replacement Fund, Automotive Equipment Account 601.65550, which has a fiscal year 2012 adopted budget of $2,400,000, of which $760,000 is allocated for these replacement vehicles.
Move approval.
Second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A 3.7. Staff recommends City Council approval to purchase 12 replacement vehicles for various departments in the amount of $638,008.68 from Curie Motors in the amount of $638,008.68 for these 3/4 and 1-ton vehicles. Funding will be provided by the Equipment Replacement Fund, Automotive Equipment Account 601-65550, which has a fiscal year 2012 adopted budget of $2,400,000, of which $650,000 is allocated for these replacement vehicles.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A 3.8. Staff of the Fleet Services Division of Public Works and of the Evanston Police Department recommend that City Council authorize the city manager to execute a 1-year lease agreement with Chicago Harley-Davidson Incorporated in the amount of $24,780 for the period of June 1st, 2012 to May 31st, 2013 for 7 leased Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Funding will be provided by the Equipment Replacement Fund, Vehicle Lease Charges Account 601.62402, which has a budgeted amount of $25,000.
Move approval. Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A4, staff recommends approval of Resolution 10-R-12, authorizing the city manager to execute a local agency agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation for the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program Tree Replacement Project. Funding will be provided by the federal ITEP program for $36,000 and the city's tree planting account 3525.65005 in the amount of $9,000 for a total allocation of $45,000.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A5, staff recommends approval of Resolution 23-R-12, authorizing the city manager to certify and submit an Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program application for the renovation of the Ladd Arboretum multi-use trail. Funding will be provided by the ITEP in the amount of $580,000. Additional project funding of $9,000 from the fiscal year 2013 CIP, $13,000 from the fiscal year 2014 CIP, and $123,000 from the fiscal year 2015 CIP will be provided for a total project allocation of $725,000.
Move approval.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
This is how we get this.
A6, staff recommends approval of Resolution 30-R-12, authorizing the city manager to certify and submit an Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program application for the Davis Street Protected Bike Lane and the Davis Street Streetscape. Funding will be provided by ITEP in the amount of $776,000, with additional funding of $97,000 from the fiscal year 2013 CIP and $97,000 from the fiscal year 2014 CIP for a total project allocation of $970,000.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have one speaker for A7, Jonathan Newsom? Newsma, sorry. Got the first name right.
Yeah. I won't belabor the 100% renewable energy.
If you could say your name and your address.
Jonathan Newsma, 1408 Dempster.
Thank you.
And I'm on the board of directors of Citizens Greener Evanston. And as I hope everyone knows by now, we are advocating for 100% renewable energy, which will enable us to not only meet but exceed our Evanston Climate Action Plan goals while simultaneously saving the residents and small businesses of Evanston significant amounts of money on their electric bills. So we will bring in more horsepower to later board meetings or council meetings. But for now, I'd just like to thank city staff for the hard work that they've done, Dave Stonebeck and Catherine Hurley, at no additional cost to Evanston taxpayers. They have put together a plan that will enable us to save our environment and save money. So thanks, everybody, and keep up the good work.
Thank you for your work. A7, staff recommends City Council approval of Ordinance 37-0-12, which authorizes an electricity aggregation program for the City of Evanston. Requesting suspension of the rules is requested for introduction and action at City Council meeting this evening.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, Alderman Grover?
Madam Chair, I think this is a good opportunity to reflect thanks back to Mr. Newsman, Mr. Fleckman, Ms. Breyer, and all of their compatriots who have been of such great assistance to the city and city staff in getting us to this point in deliberating and discussing aggregation. And so big thanks are due to all of our volunteer citizens who have put us in this great situation. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Alderman Rainey?
I think we all ought to point out also the very smart people who voted for this when they went to the polls.
Absolutely.
We probably wouldn't be doing this if it hadn't been for them. So I think the action of the group and the voters really brought it home.
Right. We have moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A8, staff recommends City Council approval of Resolution 24-R-12, which approves the plan of operation and governance for the City of Evanston Electricity Aggregation Program.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? A9, Mr. Bobkowitz.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you may, we'd like to maybe just give a little bit of a next steps as to where we go from here. We certainly appreciate your approval. We've had 3 community meetings over the last 10 days or so about this. Mr. Stonebeck's at the dais. I'll let him take the lead. So, Mr. Stonebeck, if you could talk about what we believe are the next steps for actually making the decision and the role of the City Council as we move forward.
Thank you. Dave Stonebeck, Director of Utilities. We have already pre-qualified 3 suppliers that once all this was taken care of, we would be able to go out to bid. There is a new tariff being considered right now that would change the definition of what a small business is, which then impacts the electricity that the aggregated group would purchase. Due to this change, which has not officially taken place yet but is in discussion, the suppliers are hesitant to give prices at this point in time. They want to know what our final demand load will be. It is my understanding, based on conversation today, that ruling will come out on Thursday. We have already obtained data from ComEd once on what our aggregated load would be to be able to provide the suppliers. But since this is going to change based on this new tariff, we have now just resubmitted again for that demand load, which would reduce the small commercial businesses down to the new regulation. ComEd has 10 days after the tariff is passed to provide us that data, and there are multiple communities out there requesting that same data. We believe that once we get that data, we need to provide it to our 3 pre-qualified suppliers and let them review that for 2 to 3 days so that they can get their feel on where it is before we actually go out for pricing. We anticipate to get pricing on April 30th if the schedule allows. If ComEd provides us the data, we get it on to the suppliers in time. They've had the chance to review it. We would get pricing on April 30th and then request a special council meeting on April 30th to present the pricing that we received and let council make a decision on what course of action to take regarding the term and the percentage of renewable energy that they want to take forward. That if that doesn't come to pass on that day, we would the following Monday, I believe there is another meeting proposed to the council, or the majority of the members would be here. We would ask for a special council meeting at that time.
So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, there are other communities around us, most notably a consortium of communities immediately around us that are doing this all together. We think that this is a really great opportunity, and one of the reasons we chose not to do it together is that we can make the decision, you can make the decision if the price makes sense. So that's why we're asking for sort of a sequence. On April 30th, the Economic Development Committee has already decided to have a meeting that evening, so our plan would be to have a City Council meeting just prior to that, since 7 of 9 would be in the building for that anyway. If we feel the price is not right, we would ask then, either in lieu of or in addition to the Rules Committee the following Monday, and then if the price isn't right then, we would go to the first regular meeting in the month of May. So we're going to play, everyone's in the same boat. Our neighbor cities around us are now at the same point we are. but they are all going at this together. I think we've shared some information with you. They have chosen not to go with the 75 or 100% green. Those communities have decided to just bid the minimum state price and then offer their residents individually an opportunity to go to 75 or 100. That option remains open to you if you so choose, but those communities have already decided that's what they're doing. So we think that this flexibility will be to Evanston residents' favor. I guess the proof will come out over the next several weeks, but just want to make sure you're clear and the residents are clear that the price will come back to you, and that will be the decision point will be at that meeting when we present the prices to you.
Alderman Rainey?
I certainly do agree with you, Wally, on the flexibility issue and the opportunity to get the best price. On the issue of the tariff, can you tell us any more about that, what the impact will be and what it might look like?
And I'm not exactly...
And when will we know?
We'll know on Thursday.
To the best of my knowledge, we will know on Thursday, and I don't know where there were two conflicting definitions of what a small business was. One was that the business used less than 150,000 kilowatt hours annually, and the other definition is that they use less than 15,000 kilowatts annually. Their tariff
Can you tell me what that looks like?
The average residential homeowner uses 9,000 kilowatt hours annually. And so a small business now will be somebody that uses just 15,000 kilowatts.
Would that be like a doctor's office?
Yes, that would be more like a doctor's
small
office.
Retail store?
Correct. Yes. And then the larger retail, an auto dealer or somebody like that, who has lots of lights on, or some of the light industries, they won't be qualified anymore. And so the amount of power consumed now is going to be less because some of these larger entities will not be allowed to be members of the program.
One other thing, Madam Chairman. I don't know if it's citywide, but I know in the south end of town there are these companies going around door to door being very aggressive. I opened my door the other day, and I was told immediately by this person with a badge, go get your ComEd bill. Except they said, go get your Comcast bill. I looked at him, and I said, what? Why do you want my Comcast bill? She said, because I want to save you money on your electric bill. I said, but why do you want my Comcast bill? Oh, she said, I think I mean your ComEd bill. But anyway, they're being very aggressive. They told one of my constituents that I sent them to their door. They had my name and that I sent them. But one person in 1 week got 3 visits from the same company. And what they're trying to do is get you signed up before the aggregation plan goes into effect. So is there anything we can we send out a blast email or something?
Certainly.
I got a phone call about it on my
well,
cell phone,
if you're
actually.
answering some of these strange numbers, they're all electric.
And Alderman Rainey, Chair Burris, members of the committee, Catherine Hurley is our one-stop shopping for these kind of issues. I know that Alderman Fisk, for example, at her business had a group come to them and say, sign up with us and we will give the Evanston Animal Shelter money, which was unknown to the animal shelter, unknown to CARE. So Ms. Hurley got the contact information. These are third-party providers, so they're not
IGS or something like that.
And there are so these aren't the companies we're talking to. These are third parties that are, basically willing to sell you anybody's power for the right price. So certainly people can call 311 if they're concerned, and that information will get to Ms. Hurley. We'll either reach back out to the resident, or if they just want to let us know that Company X has been to my doorstep, we'll follow up. We have talked at least to that one firm, and Catherine, I'm not sure if there's been other third-party companies.
But could we let people know before they have to call us up and tell us?
Right. We can do an update. I think now that the council has taken the action, with the full council's concurrence this evening, we can include that as part of our weekly e-news, which goes out to almost 20,000 residents citywide. So that's probably the most effective way. And members of the press, although we've missed the deadlines for some of the print papers this week, we'll certainly be able to get the word out.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, go ahead. It says
And-
Bobkowitz. It confused me. No, it's okay.
So if you sign up for an alternate retail supplier, which any residential property could do, you will save money compared to the ComEd rate. They will probably sell to you at approximately 6 cents a kilowatt hour. You're currently paying 7.733 to ComEd for supply. They will sell to you around 6 cents. The advantage of being an aggregated group is that we're combining everybody together and for a longer duration term. And based on our indicative pricing, we were getting prices around 4.5 cents. I don't believe that our final price will be that, but I believe it will be at or below 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So you will have an advantage of being in the group to get even more savings, in my opinion, than if you were to go out on your own and get into your own supplier.
Great. Thank you. I think we have moved. Actually, we've already voted on it. We're okay. Sorry. A9. The local liquor commissioner recommends adoption of ordinance 23-0-12, increasing the number of Class B liquor licenses from 16 to 17 to permit issuance to Evanston Pub, doing business as World of Beer at 1601 Sherman Avenue. This item was introduced at the February 27th, 2012 City Council meeting and was held at the March 19th, 2012 Administration of Public Works and City Council meetings.
Move approval. Second.
Alderman Grover.
In the city manager's packet on Friday was included a menu for World of Beer, which, although it wasn't officially part of the packet and this agenda item, I'm assuming now we're incorporating an official menu to make World of Beer a restaurant that fits within our Class B liquor license designation. Am I correct?
Yes, Alderman Grover, members of the committee, I think it would probably be appropriate if the item was pulled from the consent calendar, so we can enter all that appropriately into the record. And the local liquor commissioner is here if she wishes to say anything, but she was able to ascertain that the World of Beer as a franchising company was starting to move toward the availability of food, and when presented with that information at the Liquor Commission hearing, they agreed and indicated that they would be willing to move forward with the kitchen. So, Madam Chair, if it would be, staff would recommend that you report this out of committee, but with the expectation that it's pulled from consent so we can make sure all these details get on the record.
Great. Thank you.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I just feel it is important to say on behalf of the committee that this committee never expressed opposition to World of Beer or Evanston Pub. In fact, we liked the concept so much that we proposed developing a new law that would be customized to accept an application from World of Beer so that they could exist. I know that there was a lot of chatter in the community about being anti-small business, anti-Mr. Mavrakis, who we were not, and that was just operating on some false information, and he had two options. He could wait for the new license to be codified, or he could add a restaurant or food to his operation, because we had no license that fit a concept that he was proposing. So I think the best of all worlds happened. We got this. However, it should be noted that should another establishment come along, like World of Beer, for example, a custom craft brewery, we would not be able to approve them because we have no license for that. So I think I would like to make a reference to this committee to start looking at that kind of a license. I mean, we don't have to do it, but we should at least look at it, because it is true. So, while we've brought our licenses along over time, we're always reacting to a request. So this way, we could plan ahead.
Duly noted, Mr. Popkowitz? Great. No, not yet.
Not yet.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Get a motion to adjourn?
Oh.
All those in favor? Aye.